Let's go back to the story we had about President Cyril Ramaphosa addressing the nation at 7 this evening as the country prepares to move to level 3 after lockdown. Let's speak now via Skype to Tessa Dooms, a political analyst. Tessa, a very good morning and thank you for joining us this morning. A lot of anticipation towards tonight's address by the president. What do you think we can expect?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think the one thing that South Africans will be looking out for today is a bit more clarity on what is meant by lockdown level 3, how much broader the regulations will expand to include different sectors of the economy, different kinds of movement across provinces and districts. But I think the most important one is the question about will the country move in its entirety, or will certain provinces, districts, wards be left behind in lockdown level 4, and what are the implications of that? I think there hasn't been much clarity on how those decisions will be made as to which parts of the country will move to lockdown level 3, which will stay behind, and how that might impact on something like travel. If travel is allowed between provinces or between districts, how will one province or one district be held behind while another one moves forward? I think we've heard from, for instance, the Gauteng Premier about saying that he thought that all of Gauteng needed to move together and that metros couldn't be left behind. We've heard from the Western Cape Premier asking for lockdown level 3, even though his province and particularly the city of Cape Town is a very big hotspot at the moment. So I think we're going to need a lot of clarity as to how these decisions are going to be made, because of course there are going to be a lot of political, social and economic ramifications and debates that follow after that.
I don't know if you've had time to engage with those draft regulations tabled by the Minister for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Minister Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. Your thoughts about those?
So it does seem that there's a much wider expansion than many people would have thought would come at lockdown level 3. And I think that that's a function of what we've seen with the president and the NCC doing these wide consultations. And I think particularly industries like the tourism industry coming forward and saying, although tourism is going to be a major issue in terms of spread, we can provide safe regulations and safe ways for our industry to operate. And I think what we're seeing is the result of a lot of consultation, but also citizens, leaders of industry, industries themselves taking responsibility for the ways in which they can safely operate even under lockdown. And so I think that we're seeing much more than we may have expected, but the question is going to really be how much of that is going to be practical.
Tessa, on the political side, a lot of, especially on social media, opinion about who's the person in charge, whether it's the president or the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. What's your sense in terms of your analysis in this situation?
I mean, I think we saw the minister and the presidency come out speaking to one of the newspapers, saying that there's clearly a lot of debate on issues, tobacco being probably one of the hottest debated within the NCC. And I think that to say that it's only a matter of Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma versus President Cyril Ramaphosa is to, number one, diminish the collective responsibility, and we hear this from the ANC often, that the NCC has time and time again taken for its decisions. And I think that we should welcome the idea that there's robust engagement. We should welcome the idea that we have a president who's willing to listen to his ministers and is willing to engage with them. We should welcome the idea that it's not just a dictatorship within the government. And whether or not those things are being influenced by something like ANC politics and ANC factions, we should be careful about that and look out for that and make sure that it's not political decisions being made, but actually the people who are winning the debates are winning them based on sensible reasoning, based on what's reasonable, what's practical, what's good for us, and not just what's in political interest.
So we've been moving through the rung from 5 to 4, and now we're anticipating level 3. Do you think moving to level 3 is a good move? Is this an indication that South Africa is getting a better handle of this fight against the COVID-19 pandemic?
Moving to level 3 is probably the best thing that Council could do in terms of managing different crises or different parts of this crisis. because it's not only the health crisis versus the economic crisis, the spread of the virus versus the downgrade of the economy. It's also a question about the ways in which people get to live their lives. It's about the ways in which people are engaging in practices like funerals, or the ways in which they're engaging with their family members who may be ill or not. So there are also social ramifications. And I do think that, as President Cyril Ramaphosa has said, if we're going to be a society that learns to live alongside with this virus, we're certainly going to have to have society take more and more responsibility for their actions. I think where that answer lies about whether this is actually a good move or not when it comes to the virus is, number one, whether our health readiness is real. And this is not just about how many beds we have or how many ICU ventilators we have, but also things like quarantine sites. I think we've seen in the Western Cape how quarantine facilities and people are not able to or complying with the 14-day self-quarantine. So what does that mean? Do we have the quarantine facilities that can help people self-isolate for the protection of others? Are we ready in terms of industries? Is everybody on board? Is everybody sure that they understand all of it? I think the biggest thing that can help us in lockdown level 3 is really mass communication and making sure that everybody understands why we're doing the kind of safety measures that we're doing, and so that people can have the behavior change that comes with the social and personal responsibility that easing down the lockdown will demand of us as citizens.
Thanks for talking to us this morning. Tessa Dooms is a political analyst. We'll continue to have these kind of conversations as we look ahead to the President's address this evening at 7 this evening.